I think we all remember seeing the Minions for the first time. First showing up in Despicable Me as nothing more than these little yellow hellraisers. And somehow they became one of the biggest characters in modern animation. Think about that for a second. They don't have complicated backstories. They barely speak a real language. Most of them don't even have real names, aside from Kevin, Stuart, and Bob. And yet, they are everywhere. Toys, commercials, merchandise. Heck, they even had their own movie, becoming their own franchise on top of the Despicable Me franchise. Why did these little creatures become so popular? How did a bunch of background characters take over pop culture? And more importantly, are the Minions too big to fail? Today, we are going to take a look at how the Minions were created, why their simple design works so well, and how they became one of the most recognizable characters in modern animation. The idea for Despicable Me started with a former Disney animator, Sorgos Pablos, who had left Disney to form his own animation company in Spain. While there, he came up with many different ideas, including one based on a very simple concept: what if the main character's instinct is to be bad? Sorgo continued to develop this project, but there was one problem. No money was coming in, as these ideas weren't exactly paying the bills. And soon, the company was running out of options. But just as Sorgo was about to admit defeat, Despicable Me found its champion, with none other than Chris Melandre, a producer searching for the right film to invest in to launch his own animation company, Illumination. The challenge? Trying to figure out how to present such a simple idea. Sorgo Pablo, being the artist that he was, decided to pitch his idea to Illumination through a picture book he made, paired with about 20 drawings that did not, I repeat, not include the Minions. And from there, the project started to take shape, with Chris Melandre bringing in directors Pierre Coffin and Chris Ronaldo. But at this point, Gru looked very different. He had a much darker, almost gothic-like design that looked something more like Dracula. However, we all know that's a big no-no in the film world, so they had to fix that right away. The directors went to character designer Eric Gullion to completely rethink Gru's henchmen. Their first idea was turning them into these big factory workers that would act more as background characters that would contrast against Gru's big size. But as the movie developed, the ideas started to change, as they soon became robots, as they could more easily be, beaten up, thrown around, destroyed, and, completely mocked without anybody really batting an eye. But the team realized something important. The sillier they went, the better, finding new inspiration with the Jawas and the Oompa Loompas from Star Wars and Willy Wonka. Creatures that were memorable not because of their personality, but because of their undying love and loyalty. And that brings us to the big question. Why are the Minions so popular? Well, the first reason is probably the most obvious reason. Their design. The Minions are built from extremely simple shapes And as a poet once said, the eyes are the window to the soul. The minions can communicate emotions instantly, without saying a word. Look at the scene where they give Agnes a replacement unicorn toy. At first, they are nervous, because they know they messed up. But when Agnes accepts the gift, you can instantly see their joy and excitement. There is no complicated dialogue, no explanation. You just understand them. And that simplicity is a huge part of their appeal. In the first two Despicable Me movies, they weren't really characters, as they were more just background elements that would really just step in every now and again just to add some razzle-dazzle, some showmanship to the story. Their job was simple. Be funny. This might sound like a weakness, but it's actually their biggest strength, as Illumination making a smart choice by giving all the minions the same identity. Because they all look identical, we can blend them together as one big character. For kids, they feel relatable because they basically are pure childish energy. They're curious, excited, incredibly loving, and very easily distracted. And for adults, they are easy comedy. You could be cooking dinner, hanging out on your phone, or even just half paying attention, and you could still understand everything that's going on with these characters. And quick side note, by the way, guys, there was no way Illumination did not know the minions would take off, as they are already the star of their logo even before Despicable Me took off. But anywho, for this video's purpose, they were just side characters. But anyway, they weren't just side characters. They were the future. But that leads to a bigger question. How on earth did the Minions movie get absolutely awful reviews while still managing to make $1 billion at the box office, becoming one of the highest grossing movies of 2015? The answer? Timing. The Minions movie arrived right when they were at the peak of pop culture. They were already everywhere. Memes, merchandise, commercials even. The audience was not showing up because they needed to know what was going to happen. They showed up because they already loved the characters, reaching a point where they were no longer just movie characters. They had become a brand. So after looking at the history of the Minions, I think we can finally answer the questions. Why are they so popular? The answer is actually surprisingly simple. The Minions were designed to be instantly understandable. Their shapes are simple. Their emotions are simple. Their comedy is simple. You get it, they're all simple. They don't require you to memorize a complicated story with very complex arcs. They just exist to make you laugh. And that may be the biggest reason why they work. In an era where a lot of animated characters are based around huge personalities, it is incredibly refreshing to have characters that you can just rely on for a good laugh. They're not heroes, they're not villains, they are simply minions.